What if I told you that the moment your body takes its final breath isn't the end, it's the beginning of something quietly extraordinary? That death isn't a slam-shut door, but a slow, sacred opening. That instead of a harsh blackout or dramatic exit, what actually unfolds is a soft unraveling, a gentle lifting that you've known somewhere deep in your being all along. You've probably been taught to imagine death as a final moment, a sharp and irreversible line between life and the unknown. One breath you're here, and the next, gone. But that's not how it really happens. Not for the soul. The truth is far more subtle, more intimate, more alive. And once you understand what actually begins to unfold in those first seconds after the body stops, your entire perception of death and of life starts to shift. The soul doesn't erupt from the body like a firework exploding into the cosmos. It doesn't panic or flee. It doesn't vanish into some cold abyss. In fact, the soul doesn't even leave right away. What happens is far quieter, more delicate. It's like the final note of a beautiful song echoing through the silence long after the music stops. There is stillness, yes, but there's also presence. Imagine this. Your body has just taken its final breath. The organs go still, the heartbeat fades, the skin begins to cool. But something in you, the truest part of you, doesn't end. Instead, there's a strange clarity, an awareness that seems to rise just slightly above the body, as if you're watching everything from a place just inches outside of what was once yours. You're not panicked. You're not lost. You are simply aware. And that awareness is pure. For a moment, you see your body not with fear, but with a strange tenderness, like a suit you once wore that no longer fits. You notice the stillness of your chest, the softness of your face, the way your hands rest like petals folded into sleep. And in that stillness, something ancient inside you begins to stir. Not confusion, not shock, but recognition, as if part of you always knew it would be like this. You don't leave, not yet. You linger, you hover, not because you're trapped, but because you're curious, because you can feel the vibration of everything you just left. You sense the air, the emotions of those nearby, the love, the sorrow, the unfinished words. Everything is more vivid now, more real than it ever was when you were alive. The colors carry emotion. The silence carries meaning. Time seems to stretch, and then fold in on itself. What used to feel linear now feels circular, rhythmic, infinite. You may notice someone crying next to your body. You feel their grief, not like you did before, through nerves and muscles, but through energy. It's dense and heavy, almost magnetic. And yet, you're not overwhelmed. You understand their pain in a way you never could while alive. It's not pity you feel. It's deep, expansive love. A compassion so immense, it vibrates through every corner of what you are becoming. The soul's first awareness of being separate from the body isn't terrifying. It's not even dramatic. It's more like waking up from a long, detailed dream. You remember everything: the life, the identity, the mistakes, the laughter, the heartbreak. But you remember it all from a distance now. You see it with perspective, without shame or regret, only understanding. There is no rush, no cosmic timer hurrying you along. The spiritual realm has no deadlines. Instead, the experience unfolds in harmony with your unique energy. For some, this transition feels like floating gently on a calm tide. For others, it's more like sitting silently at the edge of their own life, simply observing, breathing in the last traces of who they once were. And this is the part nobody ever tells you. You're still here, you're still present, you haven't disappeared. Your soul is not gone. In fact, for a brief time, you may be more here than you've ever been. You feel everything, but without the filters of pain, fear, or ego. You see people as they are, raw, radiant, flawed, and beautiful. You see yourself as you were, not just in your last moments, but in your totality. The first awareness of being separate from the body is not like looking at a stranger. It's like seeing your favorite childhood photograph come to life, familiar and nostalgic, but distant enough that you know you're no longer inside it. You feel gratitude for the form that carried you. Even if it was sick, or tired, or broken at the end, it was yours. It gave you the sacred gift of experience. As you linger in this space, you begin to realize something else. Death isn't something that happens to you. It's something you move through, like a veil being lifted slowly, layer by layer. And with each layer, your perception expands. You see that you were never just the body, you were never just the mind. You were something far greater all along, a soul having a physical experience, not the other way around. That's why you're still here, even after you're gone, because the soul doesn't obey the rules of the physical world. It doesn't vanish the moment the body stops. Instead, it flows, it witnesses, it absorbs, and only when it's ready, when you are ready, does it begin to move beyond this earthly plane. But the initial moments, they are sacred, they are spacious. They are proof that you are so much more than you were ever taught to believe. So if you've ever sat beside someone who just passed and felt the air get heavy with presence, if you've ever walked into a room after a loss and felt them still there, if you've dreamed of someone who died and woken up feeling their love still wrapped around you like a blanket, it's because they didn't vanish. Not yet. The soul lingers, not out of fear, but out of reverence. Not because it's stuck, but because there is still something to witness, something to feel, something to complete. And maybe, just maybe, when your time comes, you'll remember this, that the moment after your final breath won't be a disappearance, it'll be a homecoming. Not a plunge into darkness, but a re-entry into light, the kind of light that doesn't blind, but illuminates who you really are, a soul, eternal, unbreakable, and more present than ever. You're about to understand something that most people never question, something so obvious, so ever-present, that it's easy to assume it's real. But the deeper you go into your own soul, the more you start to feel it. Time doesn't work the way you think it does. Not here on Earth, and especially not beyond it. You've spent your entire life measuring time in hours, days, and years. You've been taught that it moves in a straight line, from past to present to future. But that's not how your soul experiences time. That's how your human mind experiences it, a tool designed to keep you focused in this physical reality. And while it serves a purpose here on Earth, it becomes almost irrelevant the moment you transition beyond the veil. When your body dies, time doesn't stop, it dissolves. What once felt like pressure becomes peace. What once demanded your attention, deadlines, clocks, calendars, simply vanishes. Because time, in its strictest sense, is not a universal truth. It's a construct designed to help human consciousness function in a world built on change and decay. But your soul, your true essence, was never built for decay. It was built for eternity. You may think of your life as a series of events, happening one after another. You wake up, go to work, grow older, and eventually pass away. But your soul doesn't see it that way. From the soul's perspective, everything is happening now. Every moment you've ever lived, or ever will live, is part of an eternal present, and this is not just poetic, it is literal. When people have near-death experiences or spiritual awakenings, they often say, "It felt like time didn't exist," or "It all happened in an instant." That's not their imagination, that's reality peeling itself back. So what does this mean for you? It means that when your body dies, your soul doesn't drift through a tunnel toward a linear afterlife with clocks ticking in the background. Instead, you step into a realm where time folds in on itself, where years can pass in the physical world while only a moment passes in the realm of spirit. You might feel as though you've blinked, and yet on Earth, decades have slipped by. Or you might experience a single instant, so expansive and detailed, it contains lifetimes of insight, healing, and revelation. This is why loved ones who have passed may feel close to you, even years after their death. Because from their point of view, those years never truly happened. To them, they're still with you. You've never been apart. You are both standing inside the same eternal now, simply perceiving it from different vantage points. This bending of time isn't some abstract philosophical idea. It's built into the structure of consciousness itself. Your soul exists in a higher vibrational frequency where linearity is no longer needed. Imagine dreaming. You can live an entire story, travel across worlds, meet people, fall in love, and wake up to find only 5 minutes have passed. That's not an illusion, it's a clue. Your dream state hints at how time works when you're not confined to the body. So what governs the transition from the physical to the spiritual, if not time? The answer is readiness. Not clocks, not calendars, not deadlines. A soul doesn't cross over because it reached a date. It transitions when it's aligned. Sometimes this alignment is prompted by a physical death, other times by a moment of surrender, a sudden realization, or a deep inner awakening. Time doesn't decide when you evolve, consciousness does. This also explains why, after death, souls don't all follow the same timeline of experiences. Some souls move quickly into higher realms. Others linger in transition, revisiting the life they just left behind. Still, others remain nearby, gently guiding their loved ones, not out of duty, but out of love, and because to them, your last conversation might feel like it just happened. This is why when you talk to someone who has passed on, when you cry for them, dream of them, feel their presence, it's not just memory, it's resonance, because from their perspective, they haven't left, they're still with you, still listening, still loving you through the veil. You see, the illusion of time is part of the illusion of separation. Once that illusion fades, whether through death or awakening, you remember the truth, that you are not apart from anyone or anything, and the moment you remember, time begins to dissolve. Let's go even deeper. Think about moments in your life when time seemed to stand still. A moment of deep love, or grief, or awe. Perhaps watching the sunrise with someone you adore, or hearing news that shattered your world. In those moments, the clock didn't matter. The second hand on your watch may have kept ticking, but you were somewhere else, suspended, expanded. Those moments were cracks in the illusion. They were reminders from your soul that what matters most has nothing to do with time, and everything to do with presence. Presence is the real currency of the soul, not years, not schedules, not anniversaries, just presence, pure awareness, the capacity to be fully here, fully now. And when your soul leaves the body, it doesn't go to heaven as if boarding a train with a schedule. It shifts into presence, into vibrational alignment. Some call it the astral plane, others call it the in-between. But it's not a place you travel to with a passport and a clock. It's a frequency you tune into. And when you're there, your experience of how long something takes disappears. You could relive your entire life in exquisite detail in a fraction of a second, or stretch a single joyful memory into an experience so vast and full, it feels like a universe unto itself. So what does this mean for how you live now? It means the moments you rush through, the ones you label boring, routine, or forgettable, are actually doorways into eternity. It means the people you love aren't lost in some distant past. They're with you now, waiting for you to slow down, to feel their presence. It means that healing doesn't have to take years. That awakening doesn't require waiting. That freedom is not somewhere down the line. It's here, it's now, and it's yours to claim. You were never meant to be ruled by the illusion of time. It was only ever a tool, a helpful framework for building this human experience. But you are so much more than this moment in history. You are a timeless being, stretching far beyond the boundaries of the clock. And when your soul is ready to leave this earth, you won't need a calendar. You'll simply know. You'll feel the pull of the next experience, the next realm, the next truth. And just like that, you'll step across, not into an ending, but into a remembering. Because you've been there before, you'll go there again, and through it all, you remain eternal, unbound, free. What if I told you that even after someone dies, they're not really gone? At least, not right away. That the presence you sometimes feel in an empty room, the whisper of energy that wraps around you during your quietest moments, the strange sense that you're not alone when you should be, it's real. And it's not your imagination, it's the soul, lingering, not because it's trapped, not because it's confused, but because it's drawn, pulled by love, by memory, by the invisible threads that still connect it to everything it once held dear. You've likely heard stories of spirits that linger on earth, energy that doesn't quite let go, visitations from the dead that feel too vivid to be coincidence. But this isn't about ghost stories or haunted houses. This is something far more sacred. The truth is, the soul often stays close after death, not forever, but long enough to feel the echoes, long enough to witness the unfolding of what comes next, long enough to honor the life it just left behind. You see, The transition from life to whatever lies beyond doesn't happen in an instant. For the soul, time doesn't tick the way it does for the living. What feels like hours or days to you may feel like only moments to them. And in those moments, the soul lingers. It observes. It breathes in the energy of the world one last time before stepping beyond it. And it doesn't do this aimlessly. There is purpose in the linger. There is meaning in the stillness. Sometimes, the soul stays close because of grief, not its own, but yours. The sorrow of those left behind acts like a signal, a vibration that reaches across realms. When you weep for someone you've lost, when you hold on to their picture or whisper their name in the dark, the soul feels that, not in a burdensome way, but in an energetic one. Emotion is energy. And that energy has weight. It has pull. It acts like gravity for the soul, calling it back, asking it to stay a little longer, to comfort, to soothe, to be near. And sometimes, the soul lingers because something is incomplete. A conversation left unsaid, a forgiveness never spoken, a promise made but not fulfilled. You might think death erases all of that, but it doesn't. It magnifies it. The soul begins to see clearly what it couldn't fully grasp in life. And if there's something unresolved, it will remain nearby until it understands what must be done. Closure isn't just for the living. The dead seek it too. There's also the pull of deep love, the kind of love that doesn't end when the heart stops beating. Love is not bound by flesh or time. It's a frequency, a resonance that continues long after the body fades. When someone dies loving you, that love doesn't vanish. It surrounds you. It watches over you. It finds you in dreams, in songs, in sudden memories that stop you in your tracks. That's not nostalgia. That's presence. That's the soul, gently pressing its energy into your world so that you know it's still near. Some souls linger simply to witness, to see how their absence shapes the world they left. Not out of ego, but out of reverence. They want to see how you carry on, how you heal, how you grow. They hover gently in the space between dimensions, watching as life goes on without them. Not because they're stuck, but because they care. Because they need to know that it all meant something, that their presence mattered, that their love lives on through you. And you've felt this. Maybe you've walked into a room and suddenly been overwhelmed with a feeling you couldn't explain. Maybe you've had a sudden urge to look at a picture of someone who's passed, only to feel a wave of warmth or emotion flood your body. Maybe a familiar scent found you out of nowhere. Or a song played at just the right time, saying exactly what you needed to hear. That's not random. That's resonance. That's the soul communicating without words, using energy instead of language. There's a vibrational magnetism at play here. Your emotions, your memories, your love, they all create a field of energy that the soul is still attuned to. It recognizes the frequency of your heart. And while the body is gone, the connection isn't. The soul remains drawn to the places and people that still carry its signature. The chair it always sat in, the garden it once walked through, the person it loved more than life itself. These aren't just places or people. They're beacons, vibrational anchors that gently call the soul back for one more look, one more feeling, one more breath. But it's important to understand something. The soul doesn't linger because it's afraid to move on. It lingers because there's still energy here to touch, to honor, to witness. And then, when the time is right, when the final wave of memory has been felt, when the love has been fully absorbed, it begins to lift, it begins to rise. Not away from you, but toward something larger, toward the next chapter in its eternal story. If you've ever felt like someone who died was still around, if you've sensed their presence when no one else could, you were right, not forever, but for a little while. Just long enough to leave a message, just long enough to remind you that love doesn't end, it only changes form, just long enough to help you take one more step without them. The soul stays close because it loves you, because it remembers, because it sees you grieving, and doesn't want to leave you in the dark. It knows you still talk to it, it hears you, it feels your pain, it feels your longing, and in return, it lingers not out of sorrow, but out of grace. It's saying, I'm still here, not as you knew me, but as energy, as awareness, as love. And when it finally does move on, it doesn't mean it's gone. It means it has become part of something bigger, something that still watches over you, still visits you in dreams, still surrounds you in silence. So if you're wondering why you still feel them, why the tears come out of nowhere, why their name falls from your lips without warning, it's because they're still near, not forever, but just long enough to say goodbye without ever using words. There comes a moment after the soul leaves the body when everything becomes quiet, not in the way silence feels in a room, but in a way that stretches far beyond physical sound. This is where the watcher phase begins. You are no longer confined to a body, no longer tethered to linear time or physical space, and yet, you remain aware of the world you once called home, aware of the people you love, aware of every tear, every whisper, every sacred pause they take in your absence. But most of all, you become an observer, not distant, not detached, but deeply present, in a way that the living cannot yet comprehend. It may surprise you to know that after death, you do not simply vanish into the light or forget those you've left behind. Quite the opposite. In the watcher phase, you are drawn closer to them than ever before. But your perception has changed. You no longer see with your eyes. You perceive through the layers of energy, through emotion, vibration, and intention. You don't just hear someone cry. You feel the sound wrap around their heart. You don't just watch a funeral unfold. You sense every frequency in the room, the grief, the love, the unspoken memories that flicker in and out of the people gathered there. When you are in this state, you witness life not as a linear series of events, but as a beautiful, multidimensional tapestry of energy. You can sense the warmth in someone's hand even if they're sitting in silence. You can feel your name vibrate through their body when they think of you, not just when they speak it out loud. You can even see them dreaming of you, not as a separate image, but as an invitation, a bridge that momentarily reunites you. There is no need for words here. The soul has no use for language. Here, intention becomes its own form of communication, and when someone speaks to you, truly speaks from their heart, whether in mourning, in memory, or in longing, you hear it, not as sound waves bouncing through air, but as a radiant pulse in the energetic field that surrounds them. You feel it when they whisper your name into the darkness. You feel it when they hold your picture and say, "I miss you." You feel it when they light a candle, even if they aren't sure you can see it. You can, and more importantly, you feel them seeing you. This is the hidden gift of the watcher phase, the power to witness your own absence as presence, to see how your life continues to ripple outward in the hearts of those who still walk the earth. And if you've ever had a moment where you stopped mid-thought and felt eyes on you, gentle, familiar, not threatening but deeply intimate, it may not have been your imagination. It may have been someone watching you from beyond, not with judgment, but with reverence, as if to say, "I see you, I'm still here." Because that's what the watcher truly offers, the sacred act of witnessing. There is so much healing in being seen, even when no one else is looking. When someone you love passes on, you may think you've lost them, but in truth, they've gained a new way of loving you. They've become the silent witness to your victories and your heartbreaks. They watch you make your morning coffee. They watch you smile at something they once said. They watch you pause in traffic, take a breath, and wonder if they can hear you. They can, and not only do they hear you, they feel you. You are not alone in your moments of solitude. The energy you sense when you suddenly feel surrounded, even in an empty room, is not a trick of the mind. It's not delusion. It's resonance. It's a soul tuning into yours from beyond the physical veil, reminding you that love does not end when breath does. It expands, it transforms. And, for a time, that love takes the form of quiet observation. This is not surveillance, it's devotion. The soul isn't watching to intrude. It's watching to remain connected, to learn, to understand, sometimes, even to heal. The watcher phase is not about clinging to the life that was just left behind. It's about honoring it, completing the circle, receiving what was once given, and giving what could not be spoken while in the body. It is the soul's final act of grace before it moves into deeper realms of light. And you, here, now, can feel it if you slow down, if you sit with your grief not as something broken, but as something sacred. You may begin to feel the truth settle in your bones. Someone is seeing you from the other side, someone who knows your pain, your joy, your journey, and sees all of it without judgment. Have you ever wondered why certain days feel heavier than others? why some memories return with a kind of magnetic force, pulling you into them. Often, that's the soul revisiting you, not for nostalgia, but for communion, a birthday, an anniversary, a place you used to visit together. In those moments, time folds in on itself. You and they are in the same space, the same energy. They aren't haunting you, they are holding you. And even though your human eyes can't perceive them, your soul does. That chill down your spine? That inexplicable wave of emotion? That sudden urge to look behind you, even when you know no one is there? That's the language of the watcher. And sometimes, you are the watcher too. Have you ever stared at a photo of someone who passed, and felt as though time stood still, as though you were looking into a window that looked back at you? That's not just memory, that's connection. And it goes both ways. Just as they can witness your life from beyond, you can witness their presence through intention, awareness, and feeling. The boundary between the seen and unseen becomes so thin that it dissolves entirely when the heart is open. The watcher phase isn't about ghosts or shadows. It's about love choosing to remain visible without form. It's about presence without pressure, closeness without sound. It's the way your grandmother still feels like she's in the room when you make her favorite recipe. It's the way your late partner's scent drifts through the air right when you need strength. It's the way your lost friend visits you in dreams, saying exactly what your soul needed to hear. And maybe, just maybe, you've had moments when you knew you weren't alone, not because of fear, but because of peace. That quiet calm that wraps around your shoulders when grief should have swallowed you whole. That unseen hand on your heart when you're falling apart. That presence behind your thoughts, reminding you, I'm still with you. The world we live in teaches us to grieve with finality, to believe that death is a door that locks from the inside. But that's not true. The watcher phase is the proof. The love you feel even after goodbye is the evidence. There is nothing final about a bond formed in the language of the soul. And when it's your time to enter this phase, you'll understand. You'll become the witness, the presence, the quiet whisper behind the veil. You'll see the ones you love through new eyes, eyes that don't blink, don't age, don't look away. You'll be the breeze that stirs their curtain, the warmth in their chest when they need courage, the reason they smile at a memory and say, I don't know why, but I feel like they're here. Because you will be. What if I told you that love doesn't end when the body dies? It only changes its shape. That love isn't a cord to be cut when someone crosses over, but a bridge that remains standing, shimmering between realms. And that this bridge doesn't trap the soul, it holds it, tenderly, allowing it to stay a little longer, not because it must, but because it wants to. Because your love is still calling out, and the soul, even in its new form, is still listening. You've likely heard that you need to let go of someone when they die. That grieving too much, too long, might somehow hold them back. But that's only half the truth. The real power of love after death is not in the letting go, it's in the releasing with grace. There's a difference, a deep one, because when love is rooted in reverence rather than resistance, it doesn't bind a soul, it blesses it. You see, love is not an anchor, it's a frequency. It's a pulse that continues long after the heartbeat ends. When you lose someone you love, that frequency doesn't vanish, it amplifies. You start feeling them in new ways, in moments of silence, in your dreams, in the strange synchronicities that leave you breathless. That's love doing what it does best, enduring. But here's the sacred truth most people miss. The soul feels that love. It's not separated from you as cleanly as you think. It still senses your longing, your mourning, your words spoken in the dark. Your love calls to it like a vibration across the veil. Not in a way that traps or torments, but in a way that holds space. That says, you mattered, you still matter. And that frequency becomes part of the environment the soul navigates during its transition. However, love can take on different shapes after death. There's the kind of love that tethers gently, like a soft ribbon between dimensions. And then there's the kind of grief that turns into an invisible chain, grief that tightens its grip rather than opens its hand. The soul can feel the difference. It's not your pain that affects it. It's your resistance to feeling it. It's the gripping, the desperate clinging, the refusal to release what was. When you grieve from the depths of love, you're not holding the soul hostage, you're honoring it. You're giving your sadness a voice, letting it move through you instead of burying it inside. That kind of mourning is sacred. It's part of the process. It creates space for the soul to feel seen, remembered, cherished. But when the grief hardens into guilt, into self-punishment, into obsessive fixation on what you could have done differently, that's when the tether begins to distort. That's when the energy you're sending becomes heavy instead of healing. Your thoughts have power. Your emotions carry vibration. Your prayers, your memories, even your inner dialogues with the one you lost, they're not one-way messages. They echo, they ripple, they create a kind of energetic climate that the soul can sense. It's not that your sadness is wrong, it's that your refusal to move through it can create a fog the soul struggles to see through. Imagine trying to walk through a field where the fog gets thicker with every, "Why didn't I?" or "I should have." That's what soul-binding grief feels like, an endless loop that neither the living nor the departed can fully escape. But here's where your power comes in. You can help the soul cross over. Not by forgetting it, not by pretending you're okay when you're not, but by choosing to transform the pain into love in motion. Speak to them, write to them, cry if you need to. Laugh when the memories come. Create something beautiful in their honor. Light a candle not because they're lost, but because their light still flickers inside you. These are not just rituals, they are energetic permissions. They say, "I feel you, I love you, and I release you to go where you must go next." The soul doesn't need you to stop loving it to move on. In fact, that love becomes part of what carries it forward. What it needs is for you to let the love evolve, to stop trying to rewind time, to stop clutching what no longer is, and instead embrace what still is: connection, memory, presence. Even from the other side, the soul grows, it expands, and sometimes, it lingers not because it's stuck, but because it's trying to make sure you're okay. That's how profound love really is. It's not limited by one side of existence. It reaches across dimensions to check in on you, to whisper, "You're not alone," to hold your hand when no one else can. But just like a parent eventually lets go of their child's hand so they can walk, the soul also needs the space to continue its journey, and your love, when offered freely, gives it that space. Some people think helping a soul transition means forgetting it, but it doesn't. It means blessing it, sending it forward wrapped in the warmth of your prayers, not chained by the weight of your guilt. It means trusting that what you shared is eternal, even if the form it once had is gone. It means believing that letting go isn't losing, it's allowing. And the truth is, the soul never really leaves, not completely. The energy shifts, the presence changes, but the connection doesn't die. It just becomes more subtle, more sacred, more spacious. You'll feel it when you least expect it, in the quiet moments, in the wind that brushes your cheek, in the dream that felt more like a visit than a vision, in the calm that suddenly appears in the middle of your storm. Love tethers the soul, yes, but not to earth. It tethers the soul to meaning, to memory, to the heart of what truly matters. It's not a prison, it's a passage. And the more gracefully you hold it, the more freely the soul can move through it. So don't be afraid to love them still. Don't be afraid to talk to them, but don't be afraid to let them go, either, not away, but onward. When you love someone across the veil, remember this: you're not holding them back by feeling, you're only holding them back by refusing to feel. So let your grief become sacred, let your memories be alive, let your heart break open, not shut down. Because in doing so, you're not just healing yourself, you're helping them rise. Not every soul crosses the veil in the same way. While some transitions are gentle, like a tide slowly receding from the shore, others are abrupt, chaotic, and jarring, like a candle being snuffed out mid-flame. When a soul departs under sudden, traumatic, or confusing circumstances, the transition does not always feel complete. It's not because the soul is broken, it's because the energy of the departure carries shock, fragmentation, and sometimes disbelief. What remains is not a ghost in the way you've been taught to fear it. What lingers is a consciousness trying to make sense of what just happened, a soul caught between what was and what now is, still seeking orientation in a space without maps. Imagine for a moment dying in an accident. 1 minute you're on your way home, thinking about dinner or tomorrow's plans. and the next, you're hovering above the scene, watching people scream your name, but your body doesn't respond. You try to speak, to reach out, but no one reacts. You haven't yet realized you've left the physical world. In this disoriented state, time bends and blurs. There is no pain now, only confusion. The life you knew seems close enough to touch, and yet no one sees you. And it's this moment of not knowing that can cause a soul to remain near the earth plane, not out of malice or punishment, but because understanding has not yet fully dawned. These are the in-betweeners. Not quite moved on, not quite anchored. Souls who died suddenly or violently may not yet recognize that they've passed. They linger around familiar places, people, and patterns, replaying fragments of their final moments, not as punishment, but as repetition, trying to finish something, to remember who they were, to grasp what they are now. It's not uncommon for people who are energetically sensitive to feel these souls. You may walk into a room and feel an energy that doesn't match the environment, a sadness, a heaviness, or a strange emotional residue that doesn't seem like your own. You may wake up from a vivid dream about a stranger's death, or even feel a surge of panic for no apparent reason. These are not random experiences. Often, they are echoes from souls who have not yet found peace. These echoes are not meant to frighten you. They are messages, soft signals from a consciousness that is still seeking the doorway home. And often, those messages come through dreams, because the dream state is one of the few places where the veil's thin enough for communication to pass freely. You might dream of someone you never knew, or feel like you've woken up with someone else's memory pressed against your heart. You may even dream of someone you love who died suddenly, and in the dream they look confused or lost. That's not your subconscious making it up. That's resonance. That's connection. When a death is traumatic, the energy around it can ripple outward like shockwaves. The soul doesn't carry the trauma itself. It is not damaged or condemned, but the imprint of that trauma can temporarily cloud the clarity of the transition. In some cases, souls revisit the site of their passing over and over, like a loop they can't quite escape. Again, not because they are trapped, but because they are searching for context. It's like waking up from a dream you don't understand, still trying to remember where you are and what it all means. And this is where compassion becomes spiritual medicine. Too often, people respond to these in-between souls with fear. But they don't need fear, they need gentleness. If you ever feel a presence around you that unsettles you, not with malevolence, but with confusion, pause, close your eyes, speak with your heart. Say something like, "You are seen, you are loved, you are free to move on." You would be amazed at what that kind of energy can do. Because what these souls long for is not exorcism or rejection. They long to be acknowledged. They need someone to say, "Yes, you were here. Yes, your life mattered. And yes, you can go now." This is especially true in the case of those who died young, by violence, or by their own hand. Their departure often leaves behind unspoken questions, both in the living and the dead. These souls sometimes hover around their families, friends, or even total strangers who carry open hearts. They may not be trying to haunt, they may simply be trying to finish a sentence they never got to say. They may come to you because you're sensitive enough to hear, not always with words, sometimes with sensations, dreams, or flickers of memory that aren't your own. They are drawn to light, not the kind of light you turn on in a room, but the light that shines from someone who listens with love. If you've ever had a moment where you felt like someone was there, even though no one was around, and your instinct wasn't fear but empathy, you may have been in the presence of one of these souls. And if you've ever spoken into the air, "It's okay now, you can rest," and felt a subtle wave of peace pass through the room, then you've already helped someone cross. You don't have to be a psychic or a medium to do this. You just have to be willing, open, kind. The soul hears intention more clearly than it hears words. And here's something else. These in-betweeners are not limited by location. Because they are not bound by a body, they can find you through resonance. You may live thousands of miles from where they passed, and still feel them. Or you may find yourself moved to tears by a story in the news, and not understand why it hits you so deeply. Sometimes, your compassion becomes the bridge for a soul to walk across. Sometimes, your kindness becomes the final chapter of someone else's unfinished story. But this is not a burden. It's a sacred privilege. It's one of the many ways your light serves the invisible world, and in return, many of these souls will bless you with a kind of invisible gratitude. You may find unexpected peace, healing, or insight after one of these moments, like the universe thanking you for offering your awareness to someone who no longer had a voice. And you may never know their name, or see their face, but your soul will remember, because these connections, brief as they are, carry eternal echoes. There is no punishment for the soul that lingers. There is only grace, and grace moves patiently through every shadow, every confusion, every trauma. It waits without pressure. It gently whispers when the noise settles, and one day, the in-between soul will feel it, the call home, the invitation into light, and they will move forward, not because they were forced, but because they were finally understood. So, if you've ever felt someone watching through the veil of grief, if you've ever dreamed of a stranger begging for help, if you've ever felt a brush against your spirit and wondered if it meant something, it did. You were trusted with a glimpse of the sacred work that happens between realms. You were asked, not to fix or save, but simply to see. And that seeing, that compassion, is what helps turn echoes into rest, and confusion into peace. What if I told you that your emotions don't die with your body, that even after your final breath, your soul continues to feel, but in ways more profound, more expansive, more luminous than anything you've ever experienced? You've been taught that feelings are tied to chemicals, that they come from hormones, that they begin and end inside the body. But that's only part of the story. Because while your body processes emotion biologically, your soul processes it vibrationally. And vibration does not vanish when the body dissolves. The truth is, when your body takes its last breath, your emotional story doesn't disappear. It continues to unfold, not in a human way, but in a soul way. Every unresolved emotion, every radiant joy, every fragment of sorrow, every silent gratitude, they don't die with you. They become part of the energetic atmosphere you carry into the next realm. They shape how you navigate the space between this world and the next. The soul doesn't feel with nerves or skin anymore. It doesn't feel through the body's chemistry. It feels through resonance. Imagine emotions not as reactions, but as frequencies, as waves that ripple through your energetic field. In life, you interpret them through language, sadness, peace, rage, love. But in death, the soul doesn't use words. It senses, it harmonizes. It vibrates in tune with what still lingers inside you. And every emotion you've ever carried now echoes through the space you occupy, creating patterns of light, movement, and stillness. This is why some souls ascend quickly, like a breeze rising with the morning sun, while others remain, hovering close to the density of the earth plane. It's not about punishment or reward, it's about vibration. Peace vibrates differently than regret. Gratitude flows upward like light. Shame sinks like a stone. Love, when pure, creates a field of buoyancy. Fear wraps around like fog, slowing the soul's motion, not stopping it, but dimming its direction. If you spent your life carrying guilt you never released, if you avoided forgiveness, if you buried grief so deeply it became part of your identity, those energies don't evaporate when you die. They carry forward. The soul is not burdened by them the way the human self is, but it feels them. And in the realm of spirit, feelings aren't hidden. They're transparent. They radiate outward like colors in water. The soul doesn't wear a mask. What it is, it becomes. And what it becomes, it must move through. Some souls linger not because they are trapped by external forces, but because they are still navigating the internal echoes of emotions they didn't fully face while alive. Not because they are weak, but because they are sensitive to the frequencies that shape them. If you died with unresolved regret, you might find yourself revisiting moments, not to dwell, but to understand. If you passed with a heart full of gratitude, you may rise easily, drawn to light, warmth, and further evolution. Emotional energy is not static after death. It moves, it unfolds, it expands. But how it moves depends on how deeply it was integrated during life. That's why the work you do on earth, to forgive, to release, to heal, to love, isn't just for your lifetime. It becomes the map your soul uses when you transition. It becomes the emotional compass that guides your passage. Imagine standing at the threshold of this world and the next, and everything you've felt, truly felt, surrounds you like an auric field. You're no longer distracted by the noise of the physical world. You can't scroll past your pain, or numb it, or explain it away. It's all there, visible, vibrant, not to torment you, but to teach you, to let you see, because once the soul sees, it begins to release. And this is the gift of emotional navigation after death. There is no shame in it. The soul doesn't judge its emotional state, it simply experiences it. There is no voice saying you should have healed faster or loved better. There is only awareness, a knowing, a gentle illumination of what was carried, what was offered, what was withheld. And in that clarity, the soul learns. Not as a student being graded, but as an infinite being rediscovering its essence. Sometimes, the soul pauses, not because it must, but because it chooses to. It stays within the emotional atmosphere of its life to fully feel what was never fully allowed. That unspoken apology, that laughter you rushed through, that love you never dared to show. The soul visits those places, not as punishment, but as pilgrimage. It lingers there, absorbing what it missed, releasing what it clung to. It expands through the feeling, and when the soul feels deeply enough, when it has honored its emotional truth, it begins to rise. Not in a straight line, but in a spiral of unfolding awareness. It moves toward the next phase, lighter now, because what once weighed it down has been seen, acknowledged, felt. You might wonder, can I help someone I love navigate that emotional journey after they've passed? The answer is yes. When you think of them with peace, when you speak of them with love, when you forgive them, truly forgive them, you are sending out a vibration that reaches them. Your emotions become a field they can step into. Your healing becomes a light they can follow. And when you hold on to anger, resentment, or blame, you create a wall, not for them alone, but for yourself. Because grief is not just about missing someone. It's about deciding what kind of space you'll hold for their memory and for their continued journey. The emotional bond between souls doesn't break at death. It stretches, it shifts, it transforms, but it remains. And when you grieve with love instead of bitterness, when you remember with reverence instead of despair, you help their emotional field expand. You help them ascend. And what about your own death? What emotions will guide your soul when your body rests for the last time? Will you be carried by peace, by forgiveness, by self-love? Or will you feel the pull of unresolved fear, the weight of words never said, the ache of things you refuse to feel? This is not to scare you. It's to empower you, because every emotion you face now becomes one less layer your soul has to navigate later. Every act of compassion you offer yourself becomes a light in the tunnel. Every moment of gratitude lifts your vibration just a little higher. And when your time comes, those emotions will not bind you, they will buoy you. So no, emotions don't die with the body. They become the language of the soul, and that language is how the soul finds its way home. Sometimes, when a soul is ready to move on, it doesn't. Not because it's lost, not because it's trapped, but because someone they love isn't ready to say goodbye. This chapter is about the tether that forms when grief, though born from love, becomes a chain. It's about the unseen cords that wrap around the energy body of a soul and keep it close to the earthly plane, not through force or punishment, but through the invisible power of emotional attachment. When someone is so deeply immersed in sorrow that they can't imagine life without the one who's passed, they can unknowingly hold that soul back from its next step. And even though the soul is no longer bound by time or form, it still feels that pull, because love, even across realms, is a force that binds. You may think that when someone dies, they immediately go to the light, and many do, but not all. Some pause, some wait, and some remain near because the people they love are still clinging to their presence with such intensity that to leave would feel like abandonment. You might think that this is romantic, even noble. But staying behind in this way comes with its own kind of sorrow, for both the soul and the living. Because the longer a soul lingers in the in-between, the more it begins to feel the weight of the world it's no longer meant to carry. And for the living, that continued attachment can make healing feel impossible. You've probably heard stories of someone dreaming about a loved one night after night, always with the same emotion: longing, sadness, or a sense of them being stuck. Sometimes, it's a whisper you hear in your heart. Other times, it's a sudden weight on your chest that has no explanation. Or maybe it's that constant urge to visit a grave, to replay old voicemails, to talk to a picture on the wall, not from a place of peace, but from a place of desperation. When grief turns into an anchor, it doesn't just affect the one still in a body, it also reaches across dimensions to the soul who's trying to move forward. In energetic terms, these attachments become cords, psychic threads, woven from emotion, memory, and thought. Every time someone says, "Don't leave me," or "I can't go on without you," that thread tightens. And sometimes, without even realizing it, people perform rituals, acts of holding on, that bind a soul to the past. It could be something as simple as keeping a room exactly the same for years, or visiting the site of death obsessively, or repeatedly calling on the deceased without allowing space for them to answer freely. These are not evil acts, they are human. But they can create a kind of spiritual loop that keeps both the living and the dead in limbo. The soul, now in a higher vibrational state, doesn't suffer the way a human does, but it still feels. And when someone they love is drowning in sorrow, unable to release them, the soul often chooses to stay nearby, not for ego, not for control, but out of compassion. They become the quiet presence in the room, the warmth that shows up in moments of despair, the sudden flicker of light, or the dream that comes just when you feel like you're falling apart. They are trying to comfort, to reassure, to be present without disrupting the process. But the longer they stay, the more they begin to understand that their presence may be enabling the pain. And still, they stay, because love doesn't vanish with breath. In many ways, it expands, it evolves. And when there is unfinished love, love that never got the chance to speak its final words, to complete its story, or to be fully expressed, it forms an unspoken contract between the soul and the one left behind. It says, "I will wait until you're ready. I will not rush you. I will be the space you cry into, the silence that wraps around you, the whisper that says, 'I'm still here.'" But what the soul cannot do is heal your grief for you. That is yours to transform, and while they may sit with you in your darkest hour, they are also hoping, quietly, patiently, that one day you will release them with love. Not because you've forgotten them, but because you've finally remembered who you are without the weight of their departure defining you. That release is not a betrayal, it's a blessing. It is the greatest gift you can give them. It says, "I love you so much, I won't keep you earthbound. I will meet you in dreams and memory, but I will not hold you back from your journey." Oh, there is no shame in grief. It is sacred. It's a testimony to connection, to shared lifetimes, to the depth of what you experience together. But when grief becomes the only language you speak to the one who's passed, it creates a wall rather than a bridge. Souls don't need you to stop loving them. They need you to love them enough to let them grow. If you've ever had a moment where you finally felt peace, even if just for a day, and you sensed that your loved one was somehow further away, but not gone, know this: they felt your release. They felt your blessing, and they began to move more fully into their own light. You didn't lose them, you simply allowed them to rise. And that rising doesn't mean disconnection, it means expansion. Now, instead of being tethered to your pain, they are free to become part of your healing. You may find their presence becoming more subtle, more peaceful. You may stop dreaming of them with sadness, and instead dream of them smiling. That is how you know the contract has shifted. Not every soul lingers because someone held on too tightly. Some choose to stay for a while to offer comfort, to protect children, guide a spouse, or be a quiet strength during a difficult season. But even this is temporary. Eventually, the soul must continue its evolution, and the greatest act of love you can offer is to say, "Thank you for staying, I'll be okay now." Go where your light calls you. That moment becomes a new kind of union, not of bodies, but of energies that understand each other across dimensions. And perhaps you've experienced this already. Perhaps you've walked outside on a clear morning and felt a sudden surge of gratitude, not for anything specific, but for being alive. That's them, saying thank you. Or maybe you've had a moment of sudden clarity, of knowing what decision to make, even though you'd been lost for weeks. That's them, guiding you from a higher plane, now unburdened and able to serve more fully. They haven't left you. They've just become more aligned with their true form, and now they can help you without the heaviness of grief pulling at both of you. This is the sacred dance of departure. Not all endings are hard stops. Some are quiet transitions into a deeper kind of love, one that no longer needs form to be felt. If you're still grieving, be gentle with yourself. There is no timeline. But know that your loved one isn't asking you to forget. They're asking you to remember and still grow. To feel their love as wind, as light, as inspiration, not as a chain around your heart. Letting go does not mean saying goodbye. It means opening the door wide enough for both of you to become what you were always meant to be, free, connected, and infinite. What if I told you that the places you loved while alive never truly let you go? That even after death, your soul remembers the curve of your favorite chair, the smell of your old garden, the way light touched a certain corner of your room in the late afternoon. These places, these seemingly ordinary spaces, hold more than memory. They hold energy, and that energy calls the soul back, again and again, not as a ghost bound by sorrow, but as a presence drawn by love. The soul doesn't forget the places where it once felt safe. It doesn't erase the spaces where it laughed, cried, created, healed, or simply was. Long after the body has turned to dust, the soul still echoes in the environments it once cherished. And sometimes, that echo is more than just residue, it's return. A kind of revisiting that is both intentional and tender. You don't have to believe in spirits haunting houses to know that a certain room can suddenly feel heavy with presence. That a breeze can move through a hallway with more meaning than the weather can explain. That a particular chair, long unused, can still hum with familiarity when no one is sitting in it. This isn't superstition, it's resonance. When you live somewhere, truly live, your energy imprints itself into the fabric of that space. Every thought, every feeling, every conversation ripples outward into your surroundings. It's not visible, but it's real. You've felt it when you've walked into a room where an argument just happened, or when you've entered a sacred space and instantly felt peace without knowing why. The walls remember, the floor absorbs, the air shifts in subtle ways. That's the essence of imprinting. So what happens when a soul departs the body, but still remembers those imprints? It returns, not to haunt, not to scare, but to feel, to connect, to stand quietly in the vibration it once helped create. A soul may revisit a bedroom where it once dreamed, not out of longing, but out of recognition. It may linger near a garden where it once sat in silence, soaking in the earth and sky, not because it's trapped, but because that space still sings in its unique frequency. There's a deep and sacred distinction between haunting and visitation. Haunting implies restlessness, anger, or fear, a kind of torment that keeps the soul tethered to the earth. But visitation is different. It's peaceful, it's purposeful, it's loving. When a soul visits a space, it doesn't rattle walls or slam doors. It brushes gently against your awareness. It leaves clues instead of chaos. A photograph that keeps falling from the shelf, a scent that lingers with no source, a song that starts playing right when you're thinking of them. And you've likely felt it. Those moments when you walk through your house and suddenly get chills, or when you sit alone and feel as if someone is right there beside you. It's not your imagination, it's presence. And you know the difference. The energy doesn't feel cold or menacing. It feels warm, familiar, almost nostalgic. That's because it is. You're not being haunted, you're being held, loved, acknowledged. The soul isn't coming to stir fear. It's coming to remember. But what about the places that feel heavy, unsettling, even frightening? Not all energies are the same. Sometimes, spaces hold trauma. Sometimes, the energy that remains is fractured, unresolved, or confused. In those cases, the soul may be replaying moments it hasn't yet understood. That doesn't make it evil, it makes it human. A soul stuck in grief or regret may linger in the last place it felt most intense emotion. Not to cause harm, but to find clarity. And even then, the presence is not truly malevolent. It's fragmented. It's a story waiting to be completed. When you feel a presence and it unnerves you, pause. Ask yourself, is this fear coming from the energy, or from me? Am I sensing something foreign, or something familiar that I haven't allowed myself to feel? Sometimes, the discomfort comes not from what the soul is projecting, but from what you are resisting. The line between spooky and sacred is thinner than we think, and often, it's our own perception that colors the experience. The soul doesn't need a house to return to, but it often chooses one, especially if love was poured into it. A family home, a favorite retreat, a studio filled with creativity. These places don't just hold memories, they hold vibration. When the soul visits, it doesn't open doors or walk on floors the way a body does. It moves through frequency. It finds the spaces that match its signature. And in those moments, it is felt, not seen, not heard, but deeply, undeniably felt. And there's something beautiful in that. The idea that a loved one might sit next to you on the porch, just once more. Or that the sound you heard late at night wasn't the wind, but a soul pausing for a moment of peace. That the dream you had wasn't fiction, but visitation. That the place you go when you need comfort, the same old tree, the creaky swing, the corner of the couch, still holds the energy of someone you thought was long gone. These aren't hauntings, these are homecomings, sacred revisits, a gentle brushing against the veil. The soul isn't stuck in these places, it chooses to return, briefly, quietly, lovingly. To touch the life it once lived, to remind you that it hasn't forgotten, and perhaps to help you remember that love, once given, leaves behind more than memory, it leaves behind presence. So when you feel that tingle down your spine, or hear your name whispered in silence, when the light flickers without reason, or the air shifts without breeze, don't jump to fear. Consider that it might be someone you miss, stopping by. Not to haunt you, but to sit with you, to be near the vibration you still carry in your heart, to feel the familiarity of a home once lived in together. The soul doesn't seek to scare, it seeks to connect, to finish a loop of feeling, to revisit the sacred, to be seen, not in flesh, but in presence. And it does so in the quietest ways. A creak in the hallway, a breeze through a closed window, a sudden warmth in the cold. These are not accidents, they are reminders that death may end the body, but not the bond. That spaces remember us, and we remember them. So the next time you walk into a room and pause without knowing why, the next time a place feels thicker with memory than makes sense, take a moment, breathe, listen. You may not be alone. You may be sharing that space with someone whose energy never really left. Not because it had to stay, but because, in some sacred way, it chose to. You were never meant to walk through the veil alone. From the moment your soul begins to leave the body, an ancient rhythm begins to unfold. A rhythm that has repeated for countless generations, and it's not just yours. It's shared with those who walked before you, those who watched over you, and those who will follow when it is their time. What many don't realize is that the moment death approaches, the unseen world becomes unmistakably present. The soul is met, not by silence or emptiness, but by presence, sacred, intelligent, loving presence. These are the helpers from the other side. They come in many forms. Some are ancestors whose names you may never have heard, yet they've carried your bloodline through storms and centuries, watching as you lived out what they once only dreamed of. Others are light beings, guardians not tied to any single lineage, but to your soul itself. They may never have been human, but they understand humanity in a way that goes beyond language. And some are guides, soul companions who agreed to walk beside you before you even arrived here in this life, waiting patiently for the moment you would remember them. When the body begins to fade, and the veil begins to lift, it's not fear that greets the soul, it's familiarity. The soul starts to hear music that the body could never detect. It begins to feel the pull of a memory that doesn't come from this lifetime, but from something far older, more expansive. These helpers are not strangers, they are not distant angels with unreadable eyes. They are intimate, close, and deeply familiar, and their presence says one thing, over and over: you are not alone. There's a misconception that death is a solitary act, that the soul floats off into darkness, groping for meaning or guidance. But nothing could be further from the truth. The transition is attended to with a grace so complete, so profound, it could bring you to tears if you ever felt it fully in your waking state. Some souls feel this instantly, a deep warmth, a welcoming glow, as if someone just lit a lantern inside eternity. Others, especially those who died suddenly or with unresolved fear, might take a little longer to recognize the gathering around them. But make no mistake, the moment the soul steps out of the body, the helpers are there, watching, guiding, waiting. And here's what most people don't know: this help doesn't begin after death. It has always been there. There are invisible conversations happening all the time between realms. You've felt them before: the whisper that tells you to turn left instead of right, the sudden clarity when you're about to give up, the voice that speaks in your chest instead of your ears. That's not imagination. That's guidance, and it comes from beings who see what you cannot, but never force, never interrupt. They operate through resonance, not control, through intuition, not command. Have you ever looked back at a moment that could have gone terribly wrong, but didn't, and thought, something was watching out for me? That something was likely a someone, or perhaps many. And just as they were watching over you then, they will be watching over you when your time comes to return home. The soul may leave the physical form, but it never leaves the circle of divine companionship, ever. What's remarkable is the patience with which these helpers operate. There is no pressure in the spiritual realm, no pushing, no deadlines, only the deepest, most radiant patience you can imagine. They wait lifetimes for a soul to awaken to its true path. They sit quietly beside you when you're drowning in confusion. They surround the soul during the moment of death, not to rush it, but to support it, as if to say, take your time, we're right here. This patience is not passive, it's powerful. It holds space for transformation at a depth most humans can't comprehend. When the soul is in transition, it may not immediately recognize these helpers. It might still be focused on what it left behind, its body, its memories, its identity. And so the guides wait. They don't correct. They don't scold. They simply emanate a presence so full of compassion that, eventually, the soul begins to feel safe enough to let go. Letting go doesn't mean forgetting who you were. It means stepping into the next truth of who you are. And that step is never taken alone. Sometimes, ancestors appear first. These are the ones whose presence you feel during ceremonies, vigils, or when you visit old lands. They may carry the energy of a grandmother you never met, a sibling lost before birth, or a distant relative who carried a spiritual torch long before you were born. Their energy is unmistakable. It feels like home, even if you've never known them. They reach out not just to welcome you, but to remind you. You are part of a lineage far beyond biology, a soul lineage, a circle that never breaks. And then there are the light beings, those who radiate with the purity of intention so strong it pierces through illusion. Their messages are less about words, and more about remembrance. They don't speak in sentences, they transmit knowing. They don't just tell you who you are, they mirror it back to you until you remember. They guide you gently through the passageway of release, through layers of memory and identity, helping you detach from what no longer serves, while honoring everything you once were. But perhaps the most beautiful part of this process is how custom it is. Every soul is different. Some need reassurance, others need space. Some are eager to rise, others are reluctant, afraid to leave loved ones behind. The guides respond accordingly, always with kindness. If a soul resists, they wait. If a soul weeps, they comfort. If a soul hesitates, they whisper truths into the silence, gently dissolving fear. And eventually, the soul recognizes that it is not being led into darkness, but into a greater version of itself. There are moments, sacred moments, when the living can feel this too. Have you ever had a sudden rush of emotion, like someone touched your heart from beyond? Or a dream where someone you love looked more radiant than ever before, smiling at you with eyes full of light? That wasn't just a dream, that was a window. A moment when the veils parted just enough for you to witness the truth. They're not alone. And neither are you. These helpers are not bound by any religion or tradition. They are present for all. Their work is not dependent on beliefs, rituals, or dogma. They respond to energy, to soul signature, to the quiet hum of divine resonance that exists within every being. And whether someone dies surrounded by candles or in total silence, the guides arrive. Whether the person was spiritual or skeptical, the light comes. Because love is not selective. Support is not withheld. There are no spiritual bureaucracies, only grace. The next time you feel alone, remember this: you are being walked by unseen feet, held by invisible hands, guided by consciousnesses who see the whole of you, not just who you are now, but who you've always been. When the time comes for your own transition, don't imagine yourself walking into a void. Imagine a gathering. Imagine arms open wide. Imagine the kind of welcome that transcends language, that feels more like remembering than discovery. You are part of something vast. You are known across dimensions. You are accompanied, even in the silence. And when it is time for you to leave this world, you will not be met by strangers. You will be met by soul family, by love in form, by beings who have been with you every step of the way, even if you never knew their names. What if I told you that some souls leave the body, but not the story? That death does not always mark the end of a mission, that there are those who pass on with songs still unsung, with dreams half-written, with hands that never completed the work they came to earth to do. For these souls, death is not a final note. It's a pause in a symphony that still echoes through time, waiting to be finished, yearning to resolve its melody. You see, not every life ends in completion. Some souls leave suddenly, in accidents, in illness, in circumstances that seem unjust or abrupt. Others live long lives but still carry with them a quiet ache, the sense that they were meant for something more, that they came with purpose but never quite reached the mountaintop. And when the body dies, those energies don't just dissolve. They remain, humming beneath the surface of the soul's awareness, a vibration of incompleteness that seeks peace, not punishment. The soul remembers its intention. Before it entered the body, it came with a blueprint, a sacred contract drawn not in ink but in energy. Some call it a life purpose, others call it destiny. But whatever name you give it, the essence remains. The soul arrives with a task. Sometimes that task is massive, world-changing, revolutionary. Other times, it's quiet, raising a child with love, healing a lineage of pain, bringing light to one corner of darkness. But when that task goes unfulfilled, when the song remains half-sung, the soul feels it, not as shame, but as longing. This longing is not earthly. It's not driven by ego or ambition. It's not the kind of regret that says, "I should have done more." It's deeper, more spiritual. It's the vibration of purpose still seeking expression, a sacred echo. And for some souls, that echo becomes the reason they linger near the earth plane after death. They are not attached to material things, but to meaning, to the work they came to do, to the transformation they were meant to bring. And they do not leave until that resonance is somehow resolved. You may have felt these souls before. They are not heavy or dark, they are passionate. They move through spaces like unfinished prayers. You feel them in the places where dreams were born but never fully lived. In journals filled with unwritten pages, in inventions that never made it to the world, in songs never sung aloud, in paintings that never met the canvas. These are not ghosts. These are energies of potential, still vibrating, still whispering, still reaching for fulfillment. But here's the sacred truth. A soul does not need a body to complete its work. The veil between worlds is not as solid as it seems. The soul can, and often does, continue its mission from the other side. Sometimes it does this through those still living. You may find yourself drawn to a cause without knowing why, suddenly inspired to write, to create, to speak truths that don't seem to come from your own life experience. This isn't coincidence, it's collaboration. Souls with unfinished symphonies often weave their energy into the hearts and hands of the living. They align themselves with those whose frequencies match their original mission. In doing so, they find completion through shared purpose. Have you ever felt an inexplicable drive to finish something that someone else began? To speak on behalf of a voice long silenced? To carry forward a legacy you weren't born into, but feel deeply connected to? That may not just be your desire. That may be a soul finding its closure through you. There are also souls who return, not in the body, but in presence. They revisit the earth plane to plant seeds they never had the chance to grow, through dreams, through messages, through bursts of inspiration that arrive when you're still enough to hear them. These souls often appear not to haunt, but to guide. They come not with sadness, but with urgency. Their energy is one of movement, of mission, of sacred responsibility, still seeking expression. And there are those who complete their work alone, on the other side. In realms we can't fully see, there are schools of energy, planes of purpose where souls gather to continue growing, creating, evolving. A soul that didn't fulfill its purpose on earth may choose to continue that path in a non-physical way, sending love, healing ancestral lines, or preparing for a future return where the conditions are better aligned. Nothing is lost. No dream is wasted. Even what seems unfinished has its place in the greater design. But for some souls, peace is elusive until their work is done, not because they are punished for incompletion, but because their essence is wired for fulfillment. The longing is not imposed, it is innate. The soul yearns for wholeness. And sometimes, it finds it only after weaving its energy through time, through others, through waves of experience, that ripple long after the body is gone. You might wonder, how can I help such a soul find peace? How can I help finish a story that wasn't mine to begin with? The answer is simple. Listen, be still. When you feel the tug of something larger than yourself, when you sense the presence of inspiration, or a mission that feels ancient, don't dismiss it. Ask who it belongs to. Ask why it chose you. And then allow it to move through you. You are not alone. You are never creating alone. You may be the vessel for a soul's completion, and in allowing that, you become part of something eternal. There's a quiet grace in knowing that even death cannot silence purpose. That even after the body falls still, the energy of intention continues to move. Some lives look incomplete from the outside. They ended too soon. They were interrupted. But from the soul's perspective, nothing is truly incomplete. Everything is part of a larger composition. And sometimes, the most beautiful symphonies are the ones that echo across lifetimes, seeking harmony not in a single moment, but in the collective unfolding of many hearts, many hands, many voices. So, when you think of someone who passed before they could finish what they started, know this. Their energy is not gone, it's still creating, still reaching, still whispering its notes into the hearts of the living. And maybe, just maybe, you're meant to be part of that song. There comes a moment, subtle and sacred, when the soul that has lingered begins to release its final threads of connection to the earthly field. You may not notice it at first. It doesn't announce itself with fanfare or finality. Instead, it unfolds like the morning fog lifting from a quiet lake, slowly, gently, without urgency. And yet, something begins to feel different. The air in the room seems clearer. The dreams become less frequent. The once familiar signs, the flickering lights, the sudden scent, the feeling of being watched, begin to fade. This is not abandonment, it is a transition. The soul is not leaving you, it is rising into its next chapter. When a soul has lingered, either out of love, unfinished business, or a desire to comfort, it remains close in vibration to the earth plane. It watches, it whispers, it visits in dreams. You may feel it as a brush on your shoulder, a warmth in the room, a presence you can't explain. You may hear a song play at just the right time, or find feathers in places they shouldn't be. These are not coincidences. They are forms of communion, ways the soul says, I'm still here. But eventually, when the healing has taken root, and the connection no longer requires these signs to feel real, the soul begins to let go. It doesn't pull away with sorrow, it lifts with grace. One of the first signs that a soul is preparing to leave this field of closeness is the softening of emotion. The raw grief you once carried may begin to dissolve, not because you've forgotten, but because you've integrated. The tears still come, but they're different now. They carry more warmth than pain, more remembrance than regret. You start to feel grateful more often than broken. And you begin to live again, not as a betrayal, but as a tribute. The soul feels this shift. It knows when your heart has made space for life again, and that knowing becomes permission. Visitations begin to change too. You may have once dreamed of them often, feeling them close in vivid detail, perhaps even talking to them, holding them, hearing their voice. But now, those dreams come less frequently, or they feel more distant, like a farewell on the breeze. You wake up with peace instead of ache. Sometimes, you don't remember the dream at all, just a lingering feeling of being loved. This is not loss, it is evolution. The soul is saying goodbye, not to you, but to the density of the earthly field. It's moving further into the light, where it can expand more freely, no longer needing to be tethered to form in order to reach you. Synchronicities begin to shift as well. The clock may stop showing you their birth time. The birds you always saw after they passed may stop appearing on your windowsill. That necklace that kept falling, or the light that always flickered, now remains still. You might feel a sudden absence where there was once a constant hum. But listen closely, this absence is not emptiness. It's space being made. Space for a different kind of connection, one that doesn't depend on signs, but lives quietly inside you. The soul is not moving away from you. It's moving into you, into your intuition, your memories, your breath. Its love is no longer outside of you. It becomes part of who you are. The emotional echoes, the sudden waves of their energy, the random moments when you'd feel them beside you, begin to thin like mist. Not because they love you any less, but because they trust you more. They trust that you've remembered how to walk on your own, that your heart is strong enough to carry them without the need for constant reminders. This is the final blessing a soul gives, the freedom to stand fully in your life again, while still knowing love has not died. It has simply changed form. Sometimes, in the days or weeks leading up to this final goodbye, you'll sense a shift in your inner world. You may wake up one morning and realize you haven't cried in a while. You may pass their favorite place and feel peace instead of pain. You may light a candle and feel no pull to speak because you already know they hear you. This is how the soul begins to say goodbye, not with distance, but with integration. It becomes less of a visitor and more of a vibration, less of a sign and more of a knowing. And then, one day, you may feel it, a moment so quiet it almost escapes your notice, a subtle release in your chest, a breath that feels lighter than the rest. A stillness that settles over you like a blanket. That's when the soul moves on, not to vanish, but to evolve, to step deeper into its journey beyond this world. You won't see lights flashing or hear trumpets in the sky. You'll simply feel a softness, a release, the kind of quiet that comes when something sacred has completed its purpose. This is not a goodbye in the way the world defines it. It's not the end of a connection, it's the completion of a chapter. The soul no longer needs to hover close, because the love between you has matured. It no longer requires form to be felt. It becomes a frequency, a quiet presence that lives inside your wisdom, your laughter, your strength. And you begin to realize that their essence is not something you visit in dreams or chase in memories. It lives in your voice when you speak from the heart. It lives in your choices when you act with love. It lives in the way you hold others through their grief. Now that you understand the sacredness of letting go, you may never receive one final, dramatic message. There may not be a farewell dream with glowing light and tearful goodbyes. Often, it happens silently. The soul simply steps further into the light, knowing that you carry its essence now, and that you're ready. Ready not to forget, but to remember differently, to live not without them, but through them. You are their legacy. Their love now pulses in your life's rhythm, and if, one day, you wonder whether they're truly gone, just sit with yourself. Go quiet. Listen not with your ears, but with your soul, and you'll know. You'll know because the ache has become warmth, the longing has become love, the story has become complete. You'll know because you're not reaching outward anymore. You're resting inward, where they now reside. This is the soul's final goodbye, not an ending, but a transformation. Not silence, but stillness. Not distance, but depth. It's the moment the soul becomes the wind, the light, the pause between your thoughts. The moment when what was once beside you becomes something eternal within you. What if I told you that death isn't the end at all, but a return? That what we call crossing over is less like disappearing and more like stepping through a curtain, one that was always there, just thin enough to let whispers through, but thick enough to keep us from fully seeing. And when the soul finally passes through it, after all its lingering, visiting, and releasing, it does not vanish. It becomes more real than ever. The veil that separates this world from the next is not made of stone or fire, it's made of vibration. It's a shift in frequency, not a door slammed shut. And when a soul has finished what it needed to do here, whether that was saying goodbye, observing those it loved, or releasing the final echoes of grief or guilt, it begins to feel the pull of something else. Not away from love, but toward it. Not toward darkness, but toward expansion. This is the sacred moment when the soul moves from witness to traveler. To witness is to stay close, to watch from the edge of this life with soft, curious eyes. But eventually, something deeper calls. It's not a voice, but a current, a knowing that ripples through the soul's very being. And so, the soul begins to move, not in steps, not in time, but in consciousness. It drifts from the earthly field into the next vibrational plane, the place where form dissolves and truth becomes unmistakable. This is not a place of clouds or golden gates. It's a state of awareness so expansive, so alive, that no words can truly hold it. When the soul enters this next dimension, it does not lose itself. In fact, it becomes more itself than ever before. There is no confusion here, no noise, no fear. There is clarity. Imagine seeing the full picture of your entire life, all at once, not as a judgment, but as a revelation. You see the love you gave, the moments you hesitated, the choices you made in fear or in courage. And you understand. Not with regret, not with shame, but with gentle knowing. The veil lifts, and with it, all illusion. This is the point where the soul no longer needs to visit the past. It doesn't return to homes, to grave sites, to rooms filled with memory. It carries those memories, yes, but they are no longer attachments. They are now simply part of the journey, like footprints on a trail. They mattered, but they are not the destination. And so the soul begins to experience what the living often fear most, the unknown. Except now, it's not unknown. It's vast and familiar and exquisitely welcoming. The soul is not floating aimlessly. It's moving into alignment with light, with source, with every soul it has ever touched and every being it has yet to meet. Time dissolves, separation dissolves. The soul begins to remember what it always knew beneath the surface of its human life, that it was never alone, that it was always loved, that its journey was always guided. This dimension is not a static place, it's a living field of consciousness. It contains realms within realms, paths within paths. Some souls choose to rest for a while, to be still, to breathe in the purity of their return. Others move into service, becoming guides, messengers, or guardians for those still walking the earth. Some prepare to return, others continue learning in ways we cannot imagine. But all are held in light. All are wrapped in what can only be described as divine intelligence, the kind that makes everything make sense. What happens here is not an ending, it's a homecoming. It is the soul remembering its origin, its essence, its eternal nature. You see, death is only terrifying when you think it means erasure. But it doesn't, it means reintegration. The drop returns to the ocean, but it still remembers the shape of being a drop. It carries the story of its human life as part of its vibration, not as baggage, but as music. And the entire universe listens. There is beauty here that words will fail to describe, a kind of communion that transcends everything we know. Souls recognize each other, not by face or voice, but by frequency. Love draws love. Lessons draw lessons. You may meet those you knew, and also those who knew you in ways you never realized. Teachers, soulmates, ancestral energies, all waiting in the unfolding light, not with urgency, but with joy. And yes, there is healing. For all the pain, all the confusion, all the things that went unsaid. But it's not the kind of healing that requires effort. It's the kind that comes simply by being in truth. Imagine walking into a space where every question you've ever asked is already answered, not with words, but with deep, cellular knowing. That is what awaits the soul beyond the veil. Some souls hesitate before crossing, not because they fear punishment, but because Earth was meaningful. They want to stay a moment longer to remember the texture of a hug, the sound of laughter, the ache of love. But eventually, the call is too powerful to ignore. And when they cross, they are not leaving behind the people they loved. They are becoming capable of loving them even more, fully, freely, from a place beyond fear or form. So no, this is not a vanishing act. The soul does not dissolve into nothingness. It expands into everything. It merges with source, with light, with purpose, and yet it remains distinct in its consciousness. It evolves, It journeys, it continues. And it does so with a grace that only those who have truly let go can understand. And what does this mean for you, the one still living, still wondering, still grieving? It means that death is not a wall, it's a passage. It means that your loved ones have not fallen into darkness, but risen into clarity. It means they are not gone, they are simply in motion, traveling through realms where love is not broken by time or distance. They are home. Not because they escaped this world, but because they remembered the one they came from. When you close your eyes and feel their presence, when you dream of them with such vividness it wakes you in tears, when you speak their name and feel the air shift, that is not your imagination. That is connection, that is their soul, reaching through the veil, not to haunt, but to remind, to whisper, I am still here, just differently, to say, this was never goodbye. There's a quiet revolution that begins the moment you realize the soul never truly disappears. The body may release its form, the voice may fall silent, but the essence, what we call spirit, consciousness, being, remains ever present, ever near. Once you understand this, deeply, and not just in theory, everything about how you live begins to shift. It doesn't mean you stop grieving, or that loss ceases to ache. It means your relationship to that grief transforms. You begin to walk through the world with a deeper awareness, not only of those who have left, but of the sacred presence within yourself. You understand that death is not a wall, but a door, and that on the other side of that door is not absence, but continuation. When you begin to live with the knowledge that souls linger in love, that transitions are guided and layered with unseen beauty, you start to experience life differently. You take fewer things for granted. You begin to listen more, not just to people, but to spaces, energies, and silences. You become more attuned to what is not being said, to the stories hovering behind someone's eyes, to the soft echoes of presence that ripple through a room when no one else notices. You feel the pull of connection across time and space, not as a theory, but as a daily truth. And that awareness roots you. It softens the urgency of the world. It makes space for the sacred in the mundane. To live with the understanding that the soul continues is to find peace not by erasing loss, but by including it in the greater story. You learn to walk alongside it, not run from it. Death loses its power to paralyze. Instead of fearing it, you begin to prepare, not in dread, but in reverence. You start to see your own life as a preparation for that moment, not as an ending, but as a return. You ask deeper questions. Not, how much can I achieve, but, how fully can I love? Not, how do I leave a legacy, but, what kind of energy am I weaving into the world while I'm here? When you carry the truth of the soul's journey, success becomes less about what you accumulate, and more about what you elevate. Being at peace with loss is not a one-time decision, it's a gentle practice. It means learning to sit with what hurts, without closing your heart. It means finding the courage to remember, not because you want to dwell in the past, but because remembrance is how love continues. It means accepting that grief is not a sign of weakness, but a portal, one that connects the living to the departed in ways language cannot reach. When you no longer see death as the end, you stop resisting life's impermanence. You hold more loosely, love more freely, and listen more intently to the quiet spaces between moments. You also begin to notice that you are not just being watched over, you are participating in a living dialogue. You become aware of your own presence, how you walk into a room, what energy you leave behind. You understand that presence is more than physicality. It's the energy you hold, the compassion you radiate, the silence you offer someone when they don't know how to speak their pain. Your presence becomes a balm for the living and an invitation for the unseen. The more conscious you become of your own presence, the more you begin to sense the presence of others, those who are no longer embodied but still walk beside you in spirit. You may find yourself pausing before speaking, tuning in to the room in a new way. You may begin to feel when someone's ancestor is near, or when a soul is trying to communicate something through a dream or a sudden knowing. This isn't imagination, it's attunement. You're not becoming different, you're becoming more aware of what's already there. This awareness turns you into something rare in today's world, a bridge A living, breathing bridge between realms. Being a bridge doesn't mean you have to speak to the dead or deliver messages. It means you live with an openness that allows energy to pass through you. Your compassion becomes a vessel. Your listening becomes a conduit. Your stillness becomes a portal. And often, just your presence in someone's life can awaken them to healing they didn't know they were ready for. You carry the unseen in your smile, in your words, in the space you hold for others to feel what they've avoided. And sometimes, it's not just the living who find comfort through you. Sometimes, the departed do too. Because you understand the language of the soul, you move differently in the world. You no longer rush through pain. You no longer speak just to fill the silence. You start to notice when someone is carrying a weight they don't know how to name, and without needing to fix it, you offer something sacred, your presence. In this way, you become part of the healing. Not by performing miracles, but by remembering what others have forgotten, that we are never alone, that we are held, that there is always more to the story than what the eyes can see. As you continue to live with this awareness, you will find yourself less afraid of your own passing. The mystery remains, but the fear dissolves. You begin to imagine your own transition not as a tragedy, but as a return to a love so vast, so intelligent, so kind, that every fear you ever carried will melt in its presence. You start to live with the intention of making your own final moments, whenever they come, an extension of your love rather than a disruption of it. You may even begin to leave notes behind, create rituals, or offer words to your loved ones, not in sadness, but in preparation for what you already know is just a continuation. This understanding changes how you parent, how you partner, how you create, and how you serve. You stop trying to control everything, and instead start to flow with what is. You begin to trust that even in loss, even in endings, there is always something greater unfolding, and because of that trust, you become an anchor. Others feel it. They don't always know how to name it, but they feel safer around you. They feel seen, and in a world that is aching for connection, that is a powerful gift. You are not here just to pass time. You are here to embody eternity in the now. To walk the earth with the remembrance that everything sacred is closer than you think. Every life you touch, every kindness you offer, every moment of presence you hold becomes part of a greater weaving, one that stretches across lifetimes and galaxies. You are part of that tapestry. You always have been, and as you live with the awareness of the soul's continuity, you help others remember their place in it too. So breathe, be present, be gentle with your pain and open with your joy. Remember that this life is not your only one, that love never ends, that presence never fades, and that everything you do now ripples forward into a story that never truly ends. You are already the bridge, all that's left is to walk it with grace.